What is up, you guys? This is JP here. Today's video is going to be 3 tips that I'm going to be giving you intermediate lifters on how to make more hypertrophy and strength gains. A lot of people will do videos, and I've done videos on helping beginners get better when they're starting out. And while beginner tips can help beginners make progress from virtually anything. As long as a beginner doesn't walk into a gym and throw a plate on their foot or, drop the barbell on their head or something crazy, or go in the gym and do like 100 sets, something ridiculous. As long as the beginner doesn't go to extremes, they're gonna make gains. And while those tips from those tip videos from various YouTubers will help, again, they're gonna make gains. It's almost hard not to make gains as a beginner. So the tips that I'm gonna give you today are for intermediate lifters. But to preface this video, for those of you who may not know what I mean by beginner, intermediate, and advanced, I'm gonna go into that for you guys. Now, a lot of you try to dictate a beginner, intermediate, and an advanced lifter based on how strong they are or how much muscle they have. Now, this is not the right way to do it. So if you have someone for their first time coming in the gym, and let's just say they're already benching 315, a lot of you might say, wow, if they're benching 315, they're not a beginner. No, it doesn't mean that they're not a beginner. It just means that they have a very high baseline level of strength, okay? They are still a beginner in regards to them. You can't take someone's genetic start and genetic ceiling and say, okay, they're, a beginner based off these things. You have to tell where they're at in that genetic base and that genetic ceiling, which is going to determine whether they're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced. And the rate of progression is going to dictate that. And that is something that you can individualize for everyone. So for intermediate lifters, someone who has got past the beginner stage of lifting, someone who's slowed down on their gains, and they are unable to add weight week to week on the bars. So for intermediate lifters, the first tip that I would give you is to have daily and weekly undulation in your rep schemes. What this means, it sounds complicated, but what this means is that from day to day on a specific exercise and week to week, you want to take advantage of different rep ranges. For example, for a bench press, if you're doing bench press twice per week, you might have one day where you're doing bench press 9 to 5 or 9 to 12 rep range, and then you might have another day where you do the bench press 3 to 5 rep range. Obviously, the 9 to 12 would be more reps and more volume, and the 3 to 5 is less reps, more intense, higher intensity, and it's more strength focused. And then you could also have undulations week to week. So first week could be a 9 to 12 for the first day. The second day is 3 to 5. Then the second week can be like, instead of at 9 to 12, it could be a 7 to 9, and then it could be a 2 to 4 for the first and second day respectively. What this does is it basically enhances, if your goal is hypertrophy and you do this, for example, the strength-based day is going to increase your strength, which is going to increase your sub-maximal weights, which means more volume in the long run, which means more gains. For someone strength-focused, what this is going to mean when you have undulation in your rep schemes, what it's going to mean is that you gain more muscle over the long run. It's more efficient to gain muscle at those middle rep ranges than it is at the lower, heavier rep ranges. So this is going to help those people pack on more muscle and push more weight if your main focus is strength. So that is my first tip. Take advantage of that. I'm going to link another video that talks about this specific topic more in depth so you guys can understand. The second tip I'll give you intermediate lifters is to manage and keep a close eye on your volume, and on top of that, implement deloads properly. So for your intermediate lifters, you want to keep track of volume, whether that's calculating tonnage, which is sets times reps times weight, or calculating volume in a simpler manner, like just counting how many hard sets per muscle group per week you do. Whatever it is, whatever you like doing, you want to count volume in somewhere, at least keep an eye on it, okay? If you're not keeping an eye on it, you might have muscle groups where you're not doing a lot of volume and other muscle groups where you're doing too much volume, and that can quickly lead to, slowdowns in progress that you're making, or it can lead to you just stopping progress entirely, and at some point even overtraining. So watch volume, track it, make sure you're not doing too much or too little. And that's another thing with deloads, is implementing deloads properly. If you're feeling fatigued at the end of a block, or maybe every 5-6 weeks, put in a deload week. That's gonna drop fatigue so that the next week you can come back stronger and you can continue to make gains. Now, the third tip I'll give for you intermediate lifters is a little bit kind of not so much vague, but it's something that I think really helped me, is that for the things that you're very sure in, you want to have a firm ground and stand by those things that you like doing. But at the same time, you also want to be open-minded when it comes to trying different things and learning new techniques. I felt like that when I was more of an intermediate lifter and I was making gains at that specific progression rate for an intermediate lifter, sometimes I feel like I wasn't as open-minded to trying new techniques or listening to someone else as I am now. And then also too, there are other things where I felt like I knew I was maybe right in, and I knew and I was sure of, and I liked doing my way, but then you always have those gym police who come up and try to tell you to do it this way, and maybe I was just like, oh, you know, maybe they're right, when deep down I feel like I knew I was right. So what I'm trying to say is find things that you know that you like, and if you know you like them, despite what the science says, if it's safe and it works for you, stick to your guns and do that technique that you like doing. But also, if it's something else you're like, hey, this person's making a lot of sense, don't be afraid to try that new technique, and hopefully it'll make you more gains in the long run. If you guys like these tips, let me know down below what your favorite tip is. If you guys have any questions, comments, leave them down below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.